Listen carefully. I'll warn you now, what we are about to tackle is not easy listening. We are far too accustomed to word salads, an abundance of words with very little substance. You may be inclined to tune out, and maybe you already have. We are overwhelmed with words, but this is not a word salad. In Colossians 2:4, Paul is writing to a church so that no one may be deluded with plausible arguments. He addresses the disinformation that is attacking their knowledge of God's mystery, their knowledge of Christ. He admonishes a firmness of their faith. Today, our social feeds are inundated with plausible arguments. Being deluded by them remains a serious threat worthy of warning. Unchanged from Paul's day is the battleground over hearts and minds where knowledge of Christ is a victory one soul at a time. But what social networks have brought to the battlefield is an avalanche of disinformation, proving to be a weapon of mass delusion, division, and destruction in the church. We are overwhelmed with plausible arguments built tenuously on probabilities, not certainties, and twisted into false hope by our confirmation bias. And so, many are diverted from the hope and certainty in Christ, taking detours through the winding paths of deceit, pride, fear, and anger. Consider that 26% of US adults get their news from YouTube. 1 in 5 are on Twitter with 500 million tweets every day, and yet 9 in 10 tweeted news links were spread by bots, not humans. Think for a moment about the hundreds of thousands of dollars spent daily by corporations and politicians on highly targeted yet poorly regulated Facebook advertising, and the 69% of unsuspecting Americans consuming its content. On this disinformation highway, arguments once thought untenable become plausible and travel in high volume. Fake facts, distorted proofs, and irrational gotchas become the weapon of choice. Social networks provide the means to propagate falsehood like never before. Whether it be an unwillingness to double-check the facts or simply an inability, many are captured by delusion. Simply put, we are either too busy or incredibly unprepared to address this threat head-on. In this reality distortion field, the Christian must not set their hopes on mere plausible arguments. Plausibility must not become the baseline for acceptability. Plausibility, probability, without certainty is what Paul calls a delusion, a descriptor that feels overly harsh until we examine the effects of delusion on the church, on families, and on the minds of those who claim Christ. The MediaWise.church is for this battle. 2 Corinthians 10:5 instructs us to take every thought captive and destroy arguments raised against the knowledge of God. In the disinformation age, the challenge is, how do we do this? How do we return to a certainty in Christ when our hearts are hijacked? What does equipping for this battle look like when our hopes are misplaced? What are the tools, the weapons for the fight, the skills required to discern the fact from fiction? What are the pitfalls and strategies we are up against? Are you ready?